The Xbox 360. It's like that old friend from years ago. You might not talk to them much anymore, but they bring back great memories from when you actually get a chance to catch up. You remember exactly why they were your friend to begin with. Very recently, thanks to an unfortunate internet outage, I had the chance to plug in and play the Halo Reach Xbox 360. Now, this is an Xbox 360 variant that I only recently got the chance to acquire, and I have to admit that I absolutely love the aesthetic. The odd thing to me is that with today's modern consoles, we really don't get the custom options like we had back in the day. Just off the top of my head, I remember so many different custom consoles. There was Star Wars, Resident Evil 5, Gears of War, Halo Reach, Halo 4, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and many, many more. Now, some of these are quite expensive on the secondary market, like if you wanted to pick them up on eBay. Having the chance to play some Call of Duty Advanced Warfare for the first time on the Xbox 360 was simply fun and quite a good time. See, I played it previously on the Xbox One and actually on the PlayStation 4 as well, but never on the Xbox 360. So I was able to rack up achievements, and once my internet was back up and running, they would still be counted. That's the fun thing about Xbox 360. The other cool thing about going old school is that achievements still pop up even offline. Imagine that, it's madness, I tell you. The quite awesome thing that happens is that you put in a game disc and it boots up. No 40 gig install, no 12 gig update, it just works. What a simple, yet great time to be reminded of. With all the recent hype over Microsoft fixing the old Call of Duty, servers and games, hundreds of thousands of people have come pouring back into the classic games, and you can now find matches in mere seconds. It was absolutely a blast to go back and play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 through 3, as well as Black Ops 1 and 2. It reminded me of a better time and a younger, more carefree version of myself. Things were certainly less hectic, I can say that much. Now, one of the more surprising aspects of going back in time like this is the fact that, believe it or not, there's still multiplayer games that actually work. Not only do they work, but there's a number of multiplayer games that are all pretty active, all things considered. We're in 2023, folks, and I'm testing out Xbox 360 games. Let's test out Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Now, please forgive me for not being very good at this game. It's been a decade since I've last played it. But honestly, I didn't have much trouble finding matches. Pretty much just went right into the game. Now, obviously, it's not the best looking game graphically anymore, but it's actually still fluid and fun. It's probably a huge reason why Call of Duty has withstood the test of time. It's a Twitch-type gameplay shooter, and it's still second to none. And again, I'm reminded as to just how good the Xbox 360 controller still is, and always was. Now, some things will never really change. Now, I didn't really stick around for multiple matches. I felt like I got the good nostalgia piece of fun, and wanted to move on to another game. Next up, surprisingly, I wanted to test out some Left 4 Dead 2, and what do you know? It probably found the fastest match out of every multiplayer game that I tried out. I pretty much suck at this game too. Even when it was new, I wasn't very good at it, and apparently the other players didn't take too kindly to my absolute suckage, and tried to boot me from the match on a few occasions, and actually succeeded, which is kind of funny if you think about it. These dedicated communities tend to keep these games alive for multiplayer for years and years. In no way would I say that the game is fully alive and thriving on Xbox 360, but it definitely has a decent sized fan base that keeps coming back for more. And honestly, the gameplay is some of the best ever, which is why modern takes on the genre keep falling. Sometimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, I wanted to try a game I had no previous game time with, Battlefield Bad Company 2. Now, unfortunately, EA is actually shutting down the servers for this game very soon, but guess what? The multiplayer right now is still pretty active on Xbox 360. Now, I don't know many of the specifics when it comes to game modes and things like that, but I did manage to get into some games and play around a bit. Now, to add to a small caveat to the previous mentioned idea that there's no updates to the games, this particular game did have a texture pack that needed to be installed, which I declined, which is why the graphics look sort of off here, not as good as they could be. Not that they look great with the pack installed, after all this game is over 12 years old, but oddly enough, even though I'm much more of a Call of Duty fan, the game moves pretty solidly. There was no real issues getting into a match, and I actually got a few kills. Now, I would have loved the chance to check out some old school Halo games to see if they were still active, but alas, they were all taken offline before I had the chance to do this. I did, however, get the chance to try out an old classic that I absolutely love, Gears of War 3. This was when Gears of War was so badass that they still had of War in the title. Remember those days? Crazy, right? Now, I haven't played this game in a very long time, and honestly, the 30 FPS output makes the game feel a little bit slow and clunkier than I remember. I do believe the multiplayer might have been updated at 60 frames on the Xbox Series X, but I wanted to play these games authentically. Still, there's a reason Gears of War games brought the Xbox 360 to the forefront of the console market back in the day. In fact, when I saw Gears of War being played on G4 TV by Cliffy B, before the Xbox 360 was even available to purchase, I knew I had to have one, and I had to have that game, and honestly, I've never looked back since that point in time. You could argue, and rightfully so, that the Gears of War franchise has been tarnished of late, but the original 3 games still hold up tremendously well, and I'd argue that they should even be considered some of the greatest all time. Next up, I tested another Call of Duty game with Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Now, this is probably one of the most remembered games in the history of the Xbox 360, but it honestly was one of my least favorite Call of Duty series games because my memories were getting blown up by random kill streaks out of nowhere. I'd spawn in and blow up, and there was always some sort of weird glitch that would never let me see how I died in the game. So it was a bit of a downer for me personally, but hopping back into Nuketown is actually pretty fun even though I haven't played this game since it first released. So I say definitely try this one out, and it's got a packed community even to this day. To be completely honest, the Xbox One, and even so far into the Xbox Series X lifestyle, I'm a bit disappointed in the game output. That's what made the Xbox 360 so amazing. We got 4 Gears of War games, 6 Halo games, including Halo Wars, ODST, and Halo CE Remake. We got 3 Forza Motorsport games and a Forza Horizon game. The best Call of Duty games, including Modern Warfare 2 and 3. We got 3 Dead Space games, the Mass Effect trilogy. We actually got 3 Dragon Age games. Yes, all 3 Dragon Age games are on the Xbox 360. Multiple Fallout games, Skyrim, Oblivion. We've got all the Assassin's Creed games when they were great, the Saints Row games, the BioShock trilogy. The Xbox 360 era was all about the games, and it was the last point in time when people weren't obsessed with like the frame rates or resolution, or not that any of the circles that I ran in anyway. There was never a point of interest. Nobody was discussing, hey, this game's only 720p or this game's only 30 frames per second. We were all just playing our games and having a good time. You have to remember, at the time of the Xbox 360, games on demand digitally wasn't a thing yet. Meaning you couldn't just download any game released digitally. This meant that the Xbox Arcade was a huge deal back in the day. The arcade is something I actually still miss. Nowadays, we get tons of arcade games and indies and things like that, but it's kind of a convoluted mess and it's difficult to tell if a game is good or not. But in the Xbox 360 era, we knew it was good because it wasn't oversaturated with content like it is now. You could play the Simpsons arcade game and have an absolute blast. I remember when this game was just in actual arcades themselves, and my friends and I would spend tons of quarters to play the games together. I was so stoked when this game was announced on the Xbox 360. The X-Men arcade game is another great example of a game that was on this series, and I can't believe that we haven't seen an updated version of this yet. But the arcade itself was such a game changer for video gaming in general, and the Xbox 360 was leading the way. Now, honestly, as more and more servers shut down on the Xbox 360 side of things, you never know if or when we might not be able to play these games anymore or get updates and achievements. So, to answer the question, is it a good time to buy an Xbox 360 and start collecting for that console? I say absolutely yes. There's no better time to pick up an Xbox 360 and play some of the greatest games ever created. The arcade is unmatched. You can still buy games there. You can still buy games there and play some of them on the Xbox Series X or Xbox One if that's what you have. I have so many great memories. You can play Doritos Crash Course from the arcade. Even Rise of the Tomb Raider and the Tomb Raider reboot are on the Xbox 360. They're some of the most amazing games in history, and they will always go down as my absolute favorite console generation as well as game generation. There will never be another Xbox 360 era, and I'm thankful that I got to live through it at the prime of my life, and going back and playing these games was an absolute breath of fresh air. Yes, I love new games. Yes, I love some of the games that have been coming out, but we will never see releases like we saw back then, because it's absolutely difficult with zero crunch from developers these days, and the budgets and things like that. We will just never see another era like this again. So go buy those Xbox 360s, collect those games. They're starting to go up a little bit more in price right now, but they're not going to go extremely high, and you can still get a hell of a collection for a pretty good deal. I appreciate each and every one of you that watched. Please like the video, consider subscribing, and thank you very much for watching my content. Have a fantastic day, and game on.